Psychoanalysis every day, day to day. The comic scream. Namaste. In psychoanalysis every day, we look around us and find psychoanalysis secretly at work. However, as Heidegger said, it is too near to be found. It is not easy to find and understand psychoanalysis at work around us. Guide to illuminate the subject is Dr. Himanshu Vaidya. Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
So, what is this comic scream we are referring to?
Um, Hawkers in India scream aloud for a variety of purposes. Often to make known that they have come, often to sell something, often to convince you, often to communicate something to you, and often to get the better of somebody in competition. And this scream that they make is something very potent from a psychoanalytic standpoint. So when we look at applying psychoanalysis to every day, this becomes one of our very everyday experiences in India. We are surrounded by hawkers all around. And if you look at hawkers all around, you can divide them into 3 or 4 categories. One category of hawkers, they stand all alone under a tree or somewhere, and they have a fixed position. I call them the static hawkers, the static single hawkers. Right? Then there is a second category of hawkers who are also static but in a marketplace. So they are surrounded by competition, but they are static. So we have the standalone static and we have the market static. And in the market, they have to shout aloud to get the better of others or to convince somebody to buy or to overcome their competition. Now, the third category is the mobile ones. The mobile ones who move from society to society, or those who move in the railway station, or those who move around in the bus station, or those who move around in the tourist spots, or those who move around religious places. So these are
Right.
mobile hawkers, and the mobile hawkers, they have their own schedule, their own standard operating procedure to go at this society at 2 o'clock, to go at this school at 3 o'clock. Many of the hawkers, they move from school to school. One school, the recess is there, they go there. Another school, the recess is there, they go there. So they have their own standard operating procedure, and they make a variety of sounds and communication tools they use. For example, they shout aloud, the scream that we are referring to, the most common communication tool that they use. Some of them also use horns. Some of them also use some Bollywood songs. Some of them also put up pictures of Bollywood. Some of them use pre-recorded messages on the speakers. So all of this, we are interested in two specific things, that the static hawkers, the standalone ones, they don't make so much of scream communication. They can make, but usually they make it very
True.
less or not make it. But the mobile ones and the ones in competition, they make lot of scream communication, and these screams are potent with psychoanalytic meaning. So we have to go deeper into what is in the unconscious of that person as he is screaming aloud. And the reason is these screams often are made in a way that you can't even make out what he is trying to sell. And this puts it
True.
in the realm of the irrational. If it was completely in the realm of the rational, we would not have to bring psychoanalysis in. The normal cognitive analysis would be okay. But what we see is often the scream is such that you can't make out what he is trying to say or what he is trying to sell, and that is self-destructive. It is not in his own interest, and yet he keeps doing it day after day for months and years, at times across his whole life. So that becomes a psychoanalytic question, okay, why would he indulge in such self-destruction, and what greater purpose is this act serving? Obviously, it's not serving any rational purpose. It's not serving an economic purpose. It's definitely serving some psychological purpose. And that is where psychoanalysis comes in. How do we analyze this self-destruction by these strange comic tragic screams that we see all around in India every day, practically 24/7?
So, how does it start?
Uh, it starts with the situation of where one begins this profession. Take an example. A boy is growing up in a slum, in a very low income community. The household does not have money, and one day the elders decide and he has to agree that from tomorrow he has to stop going to school, stop playing with friends, stop having the restful life at home served by the parents, but he has to stand on his own feet and take out that lari and go out as a hawker. What kind of sadness, what kind of disappointment from parents, what kind of anger towards the parents and the society, and what kind of anxiety and shame would the child experience? And usually, all of this happens before the child is 14 years, 15 years of age, at least before 18 years of age. Most of them start at 15 to 16 or between 15 to 18. So when the child goes out, the first anxiety is the anxiety of being seen, because he is no longer one of the onlookers, he is the one who is looked at. And this is a very important point, that when you are standing on a street, usually you are an onlooker and somebody is a subject of your gaze. And that person on the street often is a subject of gaze of many onlookers. And suddenly, from an onlooker, you have turned into an object of gaze. And that creates very high amount of anxiety, because few people will have the confidence not to be conscious when gazed upon by so many people. One.
True.
And this is very important because the histrionic and the dependent would like attention, whereas most people will feel anxious when so much attention is put on them. It's like going on the stage for the first time, your legs will be shaking. The anxiety of being very conscious in response to so many people gazing at you. And there is an element of shyness. There is also an element of being conscious. There is an element of anxiety. There is an element of shame, because this is not something, you are not being looked at as a celebrity. You are not being idealized by the onlookers. You are actually being de-idealized by the onlookers. So there is an element of shame built into it. So the first time the person goes out with this lari, he feels all these intense emotions. Also, this very intense sadness of having lost the childhood. The unfulfilled desires of a premature maturing. And as Winnicott says, when this happens, you have to put out a false self to cover up your true self. And a prematurely mature false self is put up. And when that happens, that false self, in order to cope with the environment, has to do something which mimics a mature thing but actually is not mature. So one has to feign, one has to fake it to make it, one has to fake maturity, but one is organically not that. And in those situations, the anxiety of being laughed at, of being mocked, let us say he shouts to sell something and he is not a pro in that because he's just beginning. He is not an expert. He is not yet mastered it. He has just started, and people will laugh at it, or they will make a mimicry of it, or they will mock it. And in every situation, it will hurt him, humiliate him. And as a way to cover up the anxiety of that mockery, that humiliation, that shame, he preempts it by doing something laughable and laughs at himself. So he creates a comic scream, which is actually a tragic scream, whereby he screams, he shouts, and he laughs at it. And thereby he becomes one with the onlookers and he becomes one with those who laugh. So half of him is saved, Half of him is now one with those who laugh, and only half of him is being laughed at. Otherwise, the whole of him would have been laughed at.
Right.
And this you see in many cases that, let us say somebody is driving a car and is very anxious, a new driver, that will I dash into some wall while parking? And the anxiety is so high that at some point he actually dashes, and then the anxiety
Eventually.
becomes low. The anticipation is worse than the actual event. And often people preempt the accident by doing a mild accident themselves. So it is that kind of thing that you preempt it by doing it yourself, making it come true, the anticipation of which is worse than it's actually coming true. Right? So that is one part. And this can go to the extent that you may not be able to even communicate what you are trying to sell and thereby get into self-destruction. And this self-destruction will be partly to avoid that shame, that anxiety of being laughed at, mocked at, ashamed, and partly it will be anger for having to do what one has to do. Part of it has to be anger towards the parents, towards the society, and part of it is sadness related to what is happening, the misfortune, the mourning which cannot be done of a lost childhood. The loss is ongoing, it's not something in the past. It's not a midlife crisis where you look back at what is lost. This is an ongoing loss happening every day. So this is how it starts. And uh, are there exceptions to it? Yes, there are exceptions to it. Right? Let us say you are moving as a small kid with your parent, and your parent is a confident one. He is not one of those who makes these comic screams. He makes very sensible screams, or he uses horn, or he uses something non-scream machine, right? And he is very confident, and you move about, and you had a good childhood of the first 2 years, good internalization of a good, reliable, stable object, and a good steady equation with the mother. Then when you accompany the mother, you grow up as a very confident person about yourself and your business, and you have seen a mother confidently doing it. In such situations, you have that exception of the person being a hawker, but very much at peace with himself and not employing these tragic screams.
In the competitive world, are there not screams of attack and domination also here?
Yes, and that you see more at the marketplace. You won't see it so much in the standalone hawkers or in the mobile hawkers. You will see it more in the marketplace where there is competition. And there the screams are not tragic screams or comic screams. They are actually dominating screams. They are insulting screams. They are point scoring schemes, or one over the other hawker, or they are using domination, assertiveness to make the customer buy what otherwise he would not buy. He is confused. He is still not able to make up his mind. So they force him to make up his mind. And they use assertion. And if you look at sales, every salesman is given training in assertiveness, that you assert yourself and make a dominant statement, and the person complies. We are all very compliant. Most of us don't
uh,
know how to uncomply and fight it out with somebody who is pressurizing us to buy.
ah.
You are saying something?
No, I was just wondering because most of the time I never listen to what hawkers are screaming because the voice itself is too disturbing.
Correct.
So
You,
I avoid going. So even in the societies when these hawkers they arrive and they shout and I'm like, Bhaiya, please come and ring the bell. Don't scream. So while I'm saying this, there are many people while walking on the walking in the street, they would ignore them. So that being ignored, it is a kind of humiliation and rejecting them. How do they affect the screams there? Because they're dealing constant rejection.
so first
Like
is,
we telling them, don't scream, just come. I don't want to buy this. Just get lost. So that rejection and humiliation, what does it do to their system?
so in any sales job, rejection and humiliation are a part of the job.
But here it is way too much.
Way too much, correct.
It's not
So
a simply somebody landing an email to you, sorry, we are not up for this. This is the way they scream. People also shut them. They do that. Even
yeah,
I have done
so
many times that.
correct. So online sales actually is not sales from that point of view,
True.
right? The real sales is offline sales, and you will see doors shut on your face. You will see people talking to you in a tone of get lost, almost as though they are talking to a beggar.
Beggar. Exactly. It's an old school phenomena nowadays, but yes, it is.
Yeah.
That is how it was.
So the voice in which people talk to you, and this takes us to voice analysis, that any voice always is loaded with emotions from the unconscious. You cannot separate your
True.
voice from what is active in the unconscious at the moment the voice is generated.
True.
So the voice also tells us many things, and it is this voice which communicates to us the feelings in that matrix of their ground in their psyche from which it is arising. And that is so
True.
disturbing if we just don't want to hear it. It is so full of irritation,
Mm.
anger, pain, hatred, because
Lot of
all,
irritation,
yeah,
usually.
because the anger and hatred towards the upper class of customers is very clear.
Yes.
It's a very class phenomena that they know very clearly that the society is divided into classes. They are at the bottom and they have to suffer everything, and those above them are having the good life. So the hatred and anger towards the classes above them is very clear. The stress of scarcity back home on an everyday basis is also creating anger and irritation. Right? The tragedies which happen of people falling ill, people dying without medicines, and all of that is around them every day. So they are living in a life surrounded by sadness, anxiety, anger. The catastrophic thinking is very natural in that area.
In a survival mode, in all terms.
Correct. And in power terms, always at the feet of somebody. So all the difficult emotions travel down from the top to the bottom. Right? The prime minister scolds the cabinet minister, he scolds the industrialist, he scolds his vice president, he scolds his um, assistants. They in turn scold the petrol pump person who is standing there. They go and beat up their wives and children, and then there is nowhere else to go. So the bottom of the society always is the reservoir of all that it flows from top to bottom, and the difficult emotions usually flow. Right? So good emotions you share with people around you in your class, and the difficult emotions they go down below the class hierarchy. So one is they learn to shout to be heard because they are ignored, humiliated, mocked. Second is they have to score over each other. There are limited number of customers, limited number of deals to be made, and too many sellers. We don't have a scarcity of sellers. We actually have oversupply of sellers. So
Mm.
second is the sheer competition. The third is the ego strength, the domination, and the cunning in them, because everyone in them is not fragile. There are some hawkers with very high ego strength, some of them even with good intellect,
Yes.
some of them even with good leadership qualities, because nature has put talent across the society everywhere. So they are the ones who use the dominating scream. Right? That is not the tragic scream or the comic scream. It's a very dominating scream, and they use it to dominate both the competitors and the customers. And there's a lot of cunning into it. This cunning you can see even in case of not only hawkers but even beggars,
Mhm.
because you will have two types of beggars: those who are there by compulsion, those who are there by choice. And when you look at beggars by choice, some of them will have very high confidence, very high ego strength, very high cunning. And
They
when they,
traumatize people on road
yeah, I know of a
whom they're
beggar who is
asking
able to
from.
make 3 rounds of my society screaming aloud a sob story as though he is an artist, as though he's a narrator of a sob story. And if you talk to him, he has such high confidence that most society people won't have that kind of confidence.
Oh,
So there it is not tragedy, it's a choice. And you see the dominating scream full of point scoring, cunning, greed, and so on. But this is not the scream we are referring to in our discussion, but it is there. That every scream is not a tragic scream, but today we'll focus on the tragic scream.
so when we say tragic screams, what are the common features psychoanalytically we can see in these tragic and comic screams?
Uh, Let us divide the screams into 3-4 types. The most common are the repeated screams that everyone comes with a Larry and he screams the same thing every day. Those are standardized, repeated screams. One says the same thing every day, month and month, year and year, over and over again. And this is something which either they started off with or they improved, but they feel it's optimized now. Right? If it does not help them sell, then they may do some innovation and create a new scream. But most of them don't get into innovation, they have optimized scream. So that is the repeated scream. Second is the spontaneous scream. So there are some screams which people do just on the spur of the moment. And the the third is the scream that they try to make, but they are not successful and they keep changing from one to the other. Especially in the initial period, they have this. So when you psychoanalytically look into it, you will see different things. In the dominating scream, you will see aggression, you will see domination, you will see greed, you will see envy, you will see some sadism, you will see irritation, and you will see the will to conquer. In the
Hmm.
spontaneous scream, it is more of free association at the moment. That based upon the context, right, where the person is standing. Let's say there is a festival at the temple and the hawker is shouting something spontaneously, the free association will be colored by that occasion. The same hawker is standing outside the school and spontaneously shouting something, the scream will be colored by that occasion. By whom he is trying to communicate, impress, what is the occasion, and so on. So spontaneous screams will give us a free association of that moment. The repeated screams, which are the most often, they are loaded with shyness, with shame, with aggression, irritation, sadness, and often a tinge of catastrophic thinking of attack coming any moment. With a deep disappointment and sadness often accompanying it, with inability to mourn the tragedy of life, with a lot of feelings at times unconsciously repressed towards the parents and towards the society and classes, and a lot of hatred and anger towards the customer classes. And more often than not, many of them have a difficulty of early life loss or attack, or early life some sort of trauma, because the childhood often is predisposed to trauma. Both parents are working, both parents are mostly not regulated, buckets of emotions overflowing for both parents. So those are the things that you see, and in one sense life is unbearable, and therefore you will see escape into the surreal often into movies, and the escape is so immersive that there is a parallel movie story going on in their minds.
Mm-hmm.
And you will often see in states where this is very, very high, the movie consumption will be very high. People will be spending disproportionate amount of their earning on movies because that's the only way they can bear life. It's only an escape into the surreal which can help them to bear the real. And often you will see the pictures of photographs and Bollywood movies, right, which is a constant surreal accompaniment, so the dreams can go on. So that entire surreal phenomena is always going on in order to help the person bear with reality. Because reality is so difficult, nobody can do a complete reality acceptance of that reality.
So does this comic screen change over time, or it, as in, if we see through the lens of psychoanalysis, is something changing in the process owing to
No,
one's success or failure or rejections or establishment?
depends on the fixation and the real life experiences and one's healthy core inside if it is there. If the healthy core is there, reality acceptance is slightly stronger and life experiences are not too harsh, then the arrest and fixation can be loosened and one can go on to do mourning, to accept life, to create joy in whatever way it can be created, one can move on. That is for a minority of people, not more than 25%. 75% remain stuck and arrested in that primal trauma when it started for the first time, or when insults happened on the way, or defeats happened on the way, or tragedies as they happened in life, or when somebody goes to the school and sees school children and remembers he wanted to be there but could not be there. He was taken out at some point and given the hawker's job to be done. And many of them, therefore, you will see them outside of school or colleges. Right? Even though they may not earn so much outside the colleges, they go there because it's that lost heaven they want to be near about. And this I see even in drivers. Many drivers, they want to serve somebody who works in a college. So once they drop the professor, they stand in the college campus the whole day till the professor has to be brought back. And they are ready to do it even at lower cost because they want to stand on the college campus whole day. One, of course, is they want to see beautiful women and they want
Yeah.
to be with young people and have those young and happy vibes. But the second part also is it's like what they uh, surreally imagined to be the college to which they could not go, on which all sorts of projections have happened. So there is this seduction of that omnipotent projection. And that also happens here. That often you will find them roaming around some colleges or schools more than other places, even if it's less profitable. So very few are able to get out of it, and most of them continue the same tragic screams all their lives. They are not even lucky enough to go to have the idea to go outside the school or the college. I mean, they just have a life of drudgery. Uh, it's the life of Sisyphus, the curse of Sisyphus. So the curse of Sisyphus, actually you can see it every day in terms of almost 80% of the hawkers. They live it as a curse of Sisyphus. And the scream actually is the scream of Sisyphus. But Sisyphus does not have the courage to give out an authentic scream. Even that is not allowed. The everyday Sisyphus is even so tragic, and therefore the only way to bring it out is to shout out the tragedy in a comic scream.
Many times we see that they're using some equipments like horns or whistles, bells. So do some people not avoid this difficulty by using this, or what it is about?
Yeah, some hawkers do avoid it. But if you look at those who use non-scream mechanical instruments, be it a horn or a whistle or pre-recorded messages or some music of Bollywood playing or something, you can divide them into two, three categories. One, who are too afraid even to scream. The anxiety and shame is so high, and I am not good enough, and the inferiority is so high. The second is those who are uh, slightly healthy and techno savvy. And third, who are fortunate enough to afford this kind of things and who are moving up the value chain. And for them, this is a transitory phase. So these are the three different categories where it is done. And as you rightly said, most of them do it in order to cover up the difficult psychoanalytic uh, realities inside.
Some also convert these tragic screams into creative screams. A couple of months ago, there were a lot of on social media, a lot of hawkers who had this creative way of singing and creating their own songs for their products, and it was hilarious. What's happening there?
Uh, it comes back to the confidence, I am good enough, and the fear of how people will respond to, and the shame and the hierarchy difference between the one who is selling and the onlookers. If those things are positively aligned and one has the creative capacity, one can create some creative things, and a minority of them do, but that would be less than 5%, who use some Bollywood songs or some poetry or some religious stanza and have a creative scream. Right? So you can definitely have a creative scream, but for them, that lot of health reasons are needed inside, and a creative impulse is there. That is less than 5%, but it is there.
Does long term comic screams not lead to difficult bottle up repressed emotions? While it might sound in the beginning that it is more cathartic because you're getting a space to scream and shout, but as so many other phenomena are taking place along with the scream, it seems to be more of a repression.
Yeah, because it's an ongoing tragedy, and therefore, what is catharted out in the scream is a small part of what is generated inside. And therefore, it does not happen that after a few days of screaming, the person becomes completely healthy, happy, and bouncing with excitement. The scream therapy logic does not work because it's a very different situation, right? He's not a patient who has come to a psychotherapy session and the scream catharts out. It is an ongoing tragedy every day. So unless he works deeply on the generation of affect, which is not easy thing to do, right? And not easy by for anyone to do it by oneself without the help of a therapist. The screaming does not become cathartic. Actually, it is an ongoing tragedy where the buckets get full and overflow every day. So it's a tragedy building itself rather than a therapeutic situation of a man having a breakthrough, a emotional breakthrough every day. So we are looking at actually a tragedy, not at a therapeutic process.
Tragic and moving discussion, also being mindful about the surroundings and the people around us, which opens up new dimension of understanding world psychoanalytically. This opens up an area one wishes one had not seen. See you all again. Namaste.
Namaste.